It's Tim Albright with AVNation with an AVNation special, talking with my good friend, Mr. Josh Blalock from Shure. Welcome, sir.
What's up? Thanks for having me on, Tim. This is awesome.
Good to see you. Now, here a couple things. First of all, Josh is the new director of collaboration, ecosystems, and engagement for Shure. You and I have known each other for quite a few many years. One of the things about your position here is you're doing a lot of work. Let's say not just the ecosystems, but also in collaboration. And there has been a lot of talk, let's say the last year and a half, 2 years, around AI in the collaboration space.
Buzzword bingo right there. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's. I made the joke last year going into ISC, last year's or this year's ISC, about it. It's going to be slapped on everything under the sun, right? So that cycle, and there is a hype cycle when it comes to technology. When it comes to technology, that hype cycle has kind of got over that hump now. This is Tim's opinion, and now we're getting out down into the nitty gritty of where it actually really works, where it actually helps us get work done. When you look at whether it's MTRs, it's Zoom rooms, it's whoever has kind of these AI tools. One of the things that I have learned is that the audio quality is incredibly important to get a lot of the access or to make use of those tools. So from Shure's perspective, what role does that audio quality play in making those AI-driven tools actually function?
You think about audio quality in the room before AI came around, right? And it was all about just, can you hear me well on the other end? Yep. I'm hearing you well. Okay, good enough. We're intelligible. We're good to go. Good enough doesn't really cut it anymore. You need to make sure that the essence of what's being spoken in the room is being carried through as clearly, as reliably, as precisely as possible to the other end, to the platform, up into the cloud, right? And the reason for that is because on the other end of that conversation, whether it's Copilot or AI Companion or whatever it is, it's taking those words, it's transcribing them. So step number one, if the audio isn't as clean as it possibly can be, then that's not going to be the clearest data you're putting into your transcription. Then based on that transcription, you're doing a number of other things that have to do with tasks and other things you ask Copilot to do with your data later on as you look back into those meetings, even identifying people in the room. That stuff is all subject to not being, you could be misidentified. You could have a task that doesn't quite match what you thought was discussed in the meeting because one or two words were off or not right. That's where audio quality comes into play. It's one of those things to where it's no longer, hey, is it good enough? Can I hear you on the other side and know what you're saying for the most part? Now it's all about, I need to hear you well, but I also need to make sure that as we build out this growing Copilot, AI Companion, whatever strategy it is, and companies are adopting it and large and will continue to do so, and it will continue to evolve the way that they work and all their existing tools. As that strategy evolves, if you would just accept good enough audio instead of the absolute best audio, you're compromising a big part of that strategy right out the gate.
Well, and you make a good point there about identifying people in the room. One of the things that a number of these platforms have is the ability to go into their system and identify yourself beforehand, right? We here at AVNation, we were at Microsoft House, so I got an invitation. I went inside Teams and I said, here is my voice, right? This is Tim's voice. And I did that in a microphone that I have at my desk. Now, I am an unusual individual. The microphone at my desk is a Shure SM7B, but that's me. Now, everybody has that, though.
Gosh, so, I love it.
Yeah, well, dude, I don't have a lot going for me, but my voice is one thing I do have. And so, I have a particular, that is one thing that I know that I can count on. Yeah. It then asks for my face, which unfortunately I have the face that I have. It is what it is. But you make a good point there about, if you were sitting at your desk and you're logged in, sure, the system could see that I'm logged in. But if you're in a conference room with, 5, 10 other people, 20 other people, it has to be able to hone in and figure out that Josh is talking and not Tim. Talk about for a second about we're talking specifically about Shure, and yeah, I'm going to hone in on a specific type of Shure microphone, but the ability to kind of zone in and highlight that person has got to be incredibly important.
It does. I mean, when you're talking about those after meeting tasks and the transcript as well, and you're getting caught up, you watch these replays where it gives you little markers in the video.
Yeah.
It actually marks where a certain individual is talking or going to. You can search and say, I want to know all the things Tim said about me in the meeting, right? And it will go through and show you that. So, but if you're just participant 1 in the meeting room and participant 2, maybe it's distinguishing that you're 2 different people by voice, but it doesn't know who you are unless you've gone and enrolled your voice. But it's not just a matter of enrolling the voice. It's now a matter of making sure that as your voice is coming into the system and being compared with that enrollment, that it is comparing with the clearest possible way that you can compare. So that's another one of those elements that it's not just about the words spoken, it's about the quality and sound of the voice itself.
When you look at this, and you mentioned, prior to AI, it was "Can you hear me now?" Right, to play on an old cell phone commercial. Today, it's not that much, though. It is much more than that. So how does Shure's technologies really help free up, quite frankly, the time beforehand that we used to spend making sure that the system worked? So folks can kind of, get to work out of the meeting, not, we have to turn on the system. We have to make sure that both folks can hear us. They can understand us. We're heard clearly, and we can hear clearly. How does Shure's technology help kind of get rid of all of that so folks can get right to work?
There's a couple ways we simplify things for people in the meeting rooms. And, you're specifically asking about the in-meeting experience, the we're up and running experience. But I'll highlight one area really quickly that is unique to Shure before people ever start using that room, and that is the setup of the room. The compute for our IntelliMix room kits they're the first computes to ship with the onboard DSP software, right? So that is less stuff having to be deployed in the room, less configuration ahead of time of all the different audio inputs from around the room that are going in. Premixes it, does it all automatically, saves a ton of configuration time on the installation and setup, but still allowing you to have a premium, what would seem to be complex audio setup throughout the room simplified. It makes the job of getting up and running a lot easier, and then it sets you up for that in-room experience to be all the more premium. So then once you're up and running and you're in the room, you think about a large room, for example, where you've got a couple of our 902s, 902 ceiling mics from the IntelliMix room kits. You've got one up at the front of the room, and you've got one toward the back of the room, and they're picking up. They got beamforming mics in there. And when you look at a bar scenario for a large room by itself, usually in a larger space, or even if it's not a bar scenario, it's a more modular setup, but most of your peripherals and mics are kind of centered at the table or toward the front of the room, it becomes very difficult to pick people up from around the room, to get all that, to either hear what's happening from the speakers at the front of the room or to pick up the people toward the back of the room. Those are all challenges that oftentimes you have to stop the meeting. Hey, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing, Adam in the back of the room. Can he move a little bit forward there? And can we? So these are the little things in the middle of a meeting where you're just, they cause stress, they cause friction, they make the meeting not flow as seamlessly as it should. And by the way, we've designed audio in that space. It's to make sure that no matter what that room looks like, no matter what the layout, how big it is, everyone's being covered clearly, equally, and there is no loss in hearing no matter who you are and where you're at. So I think that'd probably be one of the bigger ways that highlight how we save that time in that room.
You mentioned something there, and that is the onboard DSP and the fact that typically in years past that would have been a very complex setup. It would have been, number one, you're looking at a piece of gear that typically is a rack or two high in a rack somewhere. Audio folks coming in, a really, really talented audio engineer is going to run that and design and program that DSP. Today, that is not the case. So how do we take, the IT, the AV manager who either grew up with an old school DSP, or maybe not, but they understand some of the concepts here, and they understand that that is typically, like you said, a very complicated setup. That is not the case today. How do we walk them through, not just so they can understand it, but also so they can help their bosses understand, look, we don't necessarily need, a big, 2-rack piece of gear and a very talented person spending 5-6 hours programming our space. We just need this piece. How do you bridge that technological gap, but also that understanding gap of this is where we used to be, but this is where we're at today?
So I'm relatively new to Shure, right? And I will just say right off the bat that it was not too long ago, with me being a very Microsoft background person in my career and very UC focused. A little bit ashamed to admit I didn't know exactly what a DSP was till maybe about a year ago. And as I started to understand what that was and the complexity, and then I understood that there is this DSP now built into the compute in the room, and it takes all that. My mind was pretty blown at that fact. So it is a revolutionary change and a giant shift, a very unique opportunity for those that are outfitting rooms. It gives those engineers, though, kind of the best of both worlds, right? Because it opens the door to a more expandable audio setup in that room, a more premium enterprise-ready audio solution in that room, without them having to waste too many hours going around to 500 different rooms in some larger organizations or more and setting that up over and over and over again, right? This is now something that can be managed. The devices can be managed in Shure Cloud. They can be deployed in a much easier way across the board without having to do extra cabling and configuration and all that good stuff. And it frees up those engineers now to focus in on those areas that are truly going to need to have that extra touch, the more complex spaces, the divisible rooms that still require some extra hands-on to some of those solutions. Businesses that have auditoriums or are conducting large broadcasts, et cetera. This lets them have, it's that age-old evolution of IT systems that say this area is becoming simplified. That used to be a very hands-on, lot of work, a lot of time area for these engineers or these professionals. It frees them up because it automates the repetitive, long, droning-on work and lets them be free to do things that require more design, more complexity, more special skill sets. And I think that's an important thing to highlight there for that transition, or that bridging of the gap. Is there is a lot of talent in those audio engineers. There's a lot of knowledge about how this all works. And to be able to free up that talent to do more specialized activities in room spaces and let the regular rooms that are kind of a rinse and repeat over and over again 100 times throughout the organization, let that be more automated without sacrificing the complexity and enterprise readiness that you get from Shure Audio Solutions. I think that's where the gap gets bridged.
That kind of leads me into my next question is take that then, and the idea that the good quality connected with that AI, how does that good quality help organizations connect the dots between the promise of AI and actual honest to God business solutions, business connections, business outcomes?
Right, because going back to the AI fatigue thing, right, and it's people are getting a little bit tired of hearing AI without understanding how it's actually adding value. The sake of AI for AI is an AI for the sake of AI is. People are starting to see through some of that, and they want to know, look, what does this actually translate to on the backside of things? And so, one of the first things I would highlight there is it's like when you're choosing that gateway into your AI platform. So if it's a Teams shop, right? They're using Copilot, they're building that strategy out. The devices in that room are the gateway. And so when you're making that choice in the first place, you got to say, okay, we're understanding that quality and precision is now important in these spaces. Good enough no longer matters. How do we know who is actually going to bring us that goodness? Because I think customers are hearing that a lot throughout the industry. Best audio from us, going to be best for all AI, Copilot, et cetera. When you look at the background that Shure has, this is one of the things I geeked out on when I came on. It's a brand, it's an audio company, it's an audio solution that was so reliable, so good, so precise that it's been trusted by the Elvises throughout the last 100 years, Taylor Swifts, the all the different government agencies. That's where that trust comes into play. That's where
Every president since Kennedy.
exactly. It's a phenomenal history. It's not a talking point. It's like it's a real live history. And so when you're thinking, oh, I'm going to trust the word of someone that really has to rely on audio, there's some really good street cred there. So when you establish that baseline of who you want is that gateway in that room, what you're actually doing on the back end of that, where you're actually realizing the value, we've got accurate data coming in. Copilot can do a bunch of stuff with that. And the real daily things that translates into is, hey, I'm not able to make it to meetings. I'm going to be able to use transcripts. I'm going to be able to use summaries. I'm going to be able to extract action items and build schedules for myself based on all this data, right? I can go through and say, I've had a heck of a day of back-to-back meetings, 8 hours straight. I can't even see straight anymore. I don't know what all my action items should be. I don't know what the rest of my week should look like based on this. Hey, Copilot, take that data now and wrap that up into build me a schedule, give me a bunch of tasks that I can do things with, tell me who I need to schedule more follow-up meetings with. These are all the real actionable things that you get to do afterwards, provided that you've got good, clean data coming into that system to really make that a reality.
Absolutely. All right, Josh, get out your fortune cookies and your tarot cards. I'm going to have you ask you a future-facing question here. When you look at this, how do you see the combination of AI and high-quality audio, which we've been talking about this entire time? How do you see those two kind of coming together and shaping the way that organizations collaborate both internally as well as with folks externally?
Look into the future, and I think video comes into the mix here too, right? And so it's AI and video, both at the personal workstation as well as especially in the meeting rooms where you've got to be picking up on a lot of different things. I think we're going to continue to see people leaning into tools like Copilot or AI Companion for greater and greater insights. You know, we right now are saying, okay, based on what was spoken and what was said, do these things for me. But in the future, we might want to say, hey, what was the temperature in the room? Okay, were people really receptive to this idea? And you think, okay, from an audio perspective, tone comes into play. But imagine if then you had Copilot or some other AI companion saying, well, you know, well, John didn't really say anything about it and didn't really have an opinion or even grunt. He did have a rather disgruntled look on his face, right, when this was mentioned, right? And so the ability to get in there and start processing people's reactions and their all the different things that are happening in the room aside from the exact conversation, I think is going to be more critical to the full picture one day. Going beyond that, though, I think that as we've kind of watched the adoption cycle with AI, both in the enterprise and in our personal lives, the way people have kind of talked about it as a buzzword for a while and then slowly started to play with it, both, again, at work and in their personal lives, and starting to get a little bit better with it now. Oh, hey, I used AI to do this cool thing today. That's pretty neat. How about you? I think one of the things that's really going to propel that type of adoption forward and make people start using it in a much bigger way is where we see more and more voice interaction with the AI, the agents that are out there, right? Instead of us typing out prompts and having to think through these prompts and having to put them in a way that makes sense per what the machine on the other end wants to see us structure the prompt as we're able to sit there and more humanly talk, ask questions through our mics in a way that relays not just the words we're asking it, but the way in which we're asking it, the tone in which we're asking it, all these different areas. I think that the mics and the algorithms associated with them, the hardware involved, and the cameras in all these cases are going to have to get more and more tuned into that human-to-human interaction, not just with each other, but with the systems that we're leveraging AI for. So these are areas that I think we're starting to see some of that out there now. I think we're going to see it evolve and get more solidified as time goes on. And I think things like Meta's Ray-Bans and the pushes and these other types of interfaces that are not the typical smartphone or laptop or whatever, more and more we're going to be using voice. We're going to be using, so I think that that's going to power a voice and visual driven AI ecosystem in which the best devices are going to be paramount to having the best outcomes. So that's kind of where I see things going.
That's a good place to stop it. I appreciate it. Josh Blalock, the Director of Collaboration, Ecosystems, and Engagement for Shure. How do people connect with you, or how do people connect with Shure?
Shure.com, easy play to go out and get started out there for the portfolio and contacting us and all that. But of course, you can reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. It's not hard to find. I'm pretty loud out there with content and opinions and whatnot. So feel free to throw out a connection, send me a message. If I'm not the person you want to talk to at Shure, I'm glad to make that connection inward.
All right, very good. Josh Blalock from Shure. For us, for AVNation, go by our website, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. All that and more at AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
This is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AV Nation.